Come one, come all, nothing but love and respect, especially since today we are talking about the right-hand man of the future Pirate King, someone that if you haven't already, as of chapter 1002 of One Piece, and in the manga currently, you have to give Roa Noa Zoro some damn respect. So, I'm going to start off this video by just outright addressing that if you haven't already, you should definitely get caught up to the One Piece manga. More specifically, this video will be spoiling some events of chapter 1002. So you should go and read it before I spoil you, because I refuse to spoil people, okay? And so now with that out of the way, let's get to it. And so, in chapter 1002, Zoro is shown just how much Enma has made a difference for him, going as far as to cut the horn off of Onigashima, and forcing Big Mom to tell Kaido to dodge, or essentially telling him to evade, essentially doing what Gohan never has been able to do in Dragon Ball. And so I might take this moment to sort of rewind a bit and just talk briefly about where I place Zoro post-time skip before Enma, and just how, with Enma, how much I believe he's grown in like just tremendous leaps and bounds, and just the sort of the growth process that Zoro's gone through since the time skip. So straight out of the time skip, and even up until the beginning of Wano, Zoro was yet to go all out throughout the story in a fight, and will obviously be this will be partially speculative, and another part based on my opinion, based on what is showcased throughout the story up until this point in time. But at this point in the story, coming straight out of the time skip, I would really have to put Zoro, in terms of his skill set, around what you might consider a 4th commander level combatant, or even a medium tier to high tier vice admiral level person, depending on how you see the strength and hierarchy of the navy being relevant in the future of the story. And so, as of that time in Dressrosa, I believe that Doflamingo was stronger than Zoro, but Zoro was still clearly stronger by leaps and bounds above Doflamingo's subordinates, only struggling with Picker because of a lack of potency over range. And so, from that point on, Zoro had no conflicts up until the Wano arc, where he's had massive development and high-tier clashes apart from Picker, leading up to his eventual upgraded sword with Enma. And so, to specify where I'd place him at this point in the story is, being that 4th commander level person, I really don't see Zoro beating Cracker in a fight at the point of Dressrosa. And so, with my understanding of his general attacks, I believe that Zoro would be somewhat ineffective against Cracker's defense. However, his 1080 world tricyclism, I feel like that would definitely cut through Cracker, and may be a potential ability that he could use to win. I believe that would be the threshold for cutting through one of the Biscuit soldiers, considering Gear 3 wasn't able to, but Gear 3 was easily able to shatter Picker. And so now we fast forward to current Zoro with Enma, and he's shown to me what I believe to be medium attacks, or medium effort attacks, that he's able to produce, that would definitely have the potency to break through Cracker's soldiers. And more importantly, his higher tier attacks, I believe, would potentially make very short work of someone of Cracker's caliber. And so at this moment, I would place Zoro easily in that 2nd division commander range, based off what is shown from chapter 1002, and might even have the argument that he's in the 1st commander range, or 1st commander tier, potentially even being over King. And so from this, you could make the assumption that Zoro's made a massive jump from 4th commander all the way up to 1st commander, based off, in terms of strength, due to Enma. And so his ability to adapt and control Enma along with the implementation of lessons that he's learnt from other opponents he's faced up until now. Things like a necessity for an increase of potency over range, like from Picker, with Zoro originally being unable to reach Picker and cut him, to now Zoro being able to cut the horn off Onigashima. A feat that, if you were to compare them in size, the horn is arguably bigger than Picker based on the size of the island, and Zoro did that from a distance. I think I've seen some images floating around of people that have given this a rough size scale, where the entrance to Onigashima, where you see the ships coming in, the Sunny, which is about 50 meters, the kids' ship is the Victoria Punk, I think it is about 100 meters. And so based off those sort of scalings, you can infer that the giant umbrella is about 700 meters and the giant sword is about 900 meters. And so if you kind of use those rough scales to compare those to the horns, that horn is probably around 200 meters, give or take, in width. And so Picker, I've seen people do or attempt to do scaling on Picker. I think they gave him about 200 meters in height, not in width. So that would be like Zoro cutting him completely down the middle with the attack that he's done in Chapter 1002. And so, as you can see from that, there is a really big difference in terms of scale there. The fact that Zoro is able to do a projectile now that's able to cut someone of Picker's size instantly in half, whereas during the events of Dressrosa, he needed someone to put him within a range to be able to beat someone like Picker. And to something else that was massive in this chapter is Zoro having blocked an invisible slash. And so seemingly a lesson he's taught himself very recently since getting more serious in the raid on Onigashima. Since Apu's attacks are sound-based, and have no visual projectile until they land and do tremendous damage, Zoro very well might have learnt from his clash against Apu and implemented it in this chapter, reading Kaido's actions and the speed and trajectory of the attack, using sort of Kid as a testing measurement for how fast the attack was coming before Zoro was able to deflect it. And so, seemingly, the only lesson that Zoro hasn't learned from his opponent's post-time skip was his fight against Killer, where Zoro was put in a situation where it was 2 versus 1. And so, in that situation, the second opponent will take an opening if you give them the opportunity to attack. And so, in this chapter, very similar to how the bandit on the bridge, Onimaru, attacked Zoro while he was fighting Killer. In this situation, while Zoro is fighting Kaido, Big Mom sees that opportunity and implements her attack in the giant bolt of lightning. And so she definitely took the opportunity to attack Zoro while Zoro couldn't defend. But regardless of all that, Zoro has definitely taken a massive step in the direction of becoming the world's greatest swordsman. Whereas this chapter, even Killer has showcased just how powerful he can be with his sonic slashes. And so, having seen this, to me, it also confirms in my mind that the Zoro versus Kamazo fight, or Zoro versus Killer fight, was again Oda's way of foreshadowing how equal they are, or showing how equal they are, in a sense. Killer having said last chapter that if he had his Punisher blades with him, the fight would have ended differently. And I believe him that he thinks that would happen, but things would have also been very different if Zoro had his 3 swords in that situation as well. To me, in my opinion, that was Oda's way of saying, before any power-ups, in terms of swordsmanship, a nerfed Killer and a nerfed Zoro, both fighting out of their comfort zones, with Killer not using his usual weapons, to Zoro having a missing blade, along with a series of other personal nerfs on them. It was a statement by Oda that they are equal, however Zoro will surpass him. This is why it ended in 2 instantaneous one-shots. Killer dealt a lasting blow that would have inevitably rendered Zoro unconscious, whereas Zoro instantaneously on impact rendered Killer unconscious, potentially being a way of saying the only big difference between them is that Zoro is a little bit more durable than Killer. And so now that Killer is no longer nerfed, he has also not had any significant power-ups, whereas Zoro has been gifted a tremendous upgrade and has now surpassed Killer overall to me as a rival, with Zoro having attained Enma. Whereas I still think in this situation, Killer should be sort of identifying Zoro as a rival still, whereas Zoro sort of surpassed the threat of Killer already. So it's sort of chasing previous notoriety there. And so I still believe at this level, with his own named blades instead of nameless ones he had while fighting Zoro, Killer would have been able to deal a lot more damage like he did against Kaido. And during this latest chapter, chapter 1002, Killer showed an incredibly versatile and unique style of swordsmanship, being able to produce sonic attacks, sonic slashes as well. This is where the added dimension of the sword that makes a difference comes into question to me. Last chapter, Zoro had seemingly clarified he does not possess the technique of advanced Ryo to be able to damage Kaido like Luffy has, and yet this chapter, seemingly his sword slash was going to be the one attack this chapter that would have caused significant damage to Kaido, causing him to dodge. Where previously it was thought that that the sword only utilized haki of the user. This chapter seemingly implied that Zoro was either always capable of doing a slash of this level, or that on some level, Odin's will, or more specifically the will of Enma, is able to add its own level of haki and amplify these attacks in some regard. Now, this is something that has always potentially been an underlying narrative throughout the story, being introduced with the Sandai Kitetsu and swords like Shisui. This could have also then infer that depending on the objective of a sword, may be stronger or weaker based on the will of the sword, and a true swordsman, the likes of Mihawk, would be able to control the will of a sword. So to me, for this point, I'll bring up two swordsmen in two instances, in Mihawk and Yoru, and Shiryu and Ryu. And so during Marineford, Mihawk claimed red hair, sorry, but this power knows no restraint before attacking Luffy effortlessly. And so sending out attacks comparative to Zoro as of the moment in chapter 1002, I believe here in this moment, this is Mihawk surrendering his will to the will of Yoru, whose blade became black with Mihawk's shared goal of becoming the world's greatest swordsman. Again, this line of thinking might also be apparent when Shiryu was released from Impel Down and given his sword. His immediate reaction is to cut someone down, very similarly to when Zoro got the Sandai Kitetsu and unintentionally cut down members of Baroque Works at Whiskey Peak. I think from this, you could come to the conclusion that swords have their own will. Whether to be owned by the greatest swordsman like Yoru, or to one day become the number one like Wado Ichimonji, or to cut down or to kill people like I believe the Sandai Kitetsu and Ryu as wills more leaning towards. So now in a situation like Zoro vs Kaido, Zoro's will is aligned with Enma's, and will try and attain revenge for its previous owner in Odin, giving Kaido and Big Mom the impressions of Odin's will coming from the sword. And so, in a lot of ways, that makes Enma, and more specifically the give and take relationship of Enma's will, and more specifically the give and take and the strain of using Ryo from Enma. In a lot of ways, Enma is like Zoro's version of Gear 4. A massive power-up where he can be conservative in a fight and sustain himself in a prolonged fight, or he can sort of sacrifice that conservativeness for monumental strength by using or releasing a lot more Rio and a lot more Haki, potentially running out of Haki, similarly to Luffy in Gear 4, going so far as maybe during this fight, Zoro may need 10 minutes to rest after extended use of Haki from Enma, and he might need to recover his Haki. So in conclusion, having seen the jump in power a sword has made for someone like Zoro, and the difference in having a named blade compared to a nameless blade or a non-graded sword, like the one Killer had, I believe that as the story goes on, the importance and more specifically the quality of a blade, apart from the skill of the fighter, will become the next biggest decider in battle, other than the skill of the fighter. In situations where you have a 1v1 and both swordsmen are of equal strength, I believe whatever swordsman had the better blade in that situation would win. Very similar to how Zoro vs. Killer played out, with Zoro still having 2 of his named blades and Killer using 2 nameless blades, although that was more Killer's lack of skill there in using scythes as opposed to his normal rotating blades. So now I'm just going to end this video simply saying, please give me a bit of a handout, slash the subscribe button, stab the bell icon and the like button for more content and to help out the channel. And if you want to talk more swordsmanship or even about blades in One Piece, just join the Discord server. The link is in the description down below. And until next time, please keep following the way of the samurai. Peace.